Hi guys, good evening. Welcome to our penultimate live session of the Ayurvedic Success System. Feels like we only just started kind of a week ago on Sunday. It probably doesn't for you guys, but it kind of seems to have flown by for me since we started over a week ago. So I hope everyone is well. I hope everyone has had a lovely start to the week. I think those of you who read my emails and the post on the Facebook page, one of the things I always say, Monday and Tuesday actually, such important days of the week, the most important days of the week, I think, because if we get Monday and Tuesday embedded properly, if we get them lived properly, if we get our body and our mind and our attitudes and our behaviors really on point on Monday and Tuesday, I think it sets us up for the whole week. As a famous saying I'll talk about later, which was something that my mentor used to say to me virtually every day, which was, well begun is half done. Well begun is half done. Start something well and you're halfway to completing it, whether that's a project, whether it's the week, whether it's a training session, no matter what it is. So well begun is half done. Before we dive in, apologies for having to cancel last night. Well, not cancel, tonight is what we should have been talking about yesterday, but obviously I had to postpone it. There was no dramas, there was nothing major. Thank you for all the lovely messages. It was just we had childcare complexities that we hadn't foreseen, which means I couldn't have got back in time. Okay, so there was no emergency in terms of anything serious, but thank you for all the lovely well wishes. Before I dive in, if everyone could just give me a barrage of emojis, smiley faces, thumbs up, just to help get the video to the top of the feed, so everyone who's trying to find it on the Facebook page can find it just a little bit easier. Welcome everyone, Disha, Lindsay, Kirsty, Andrea, Lynn, Polly. I hope everyone is well. Also wanted to say a very, very, very big welcome to everyone who's joined the Brilliant Life Blueprint. We've had so many people convert across to the 6-month course. And for those of you that have, I can't wait to continue. Actually, looking at the names here, I can see loads of you who have already joined the Brilliant Life Blueprint. And I can't wait to continue the journey with you. Remember, there's a really important video waiting for you on the course platform, which is some of the most it's looking at some of the most important and powerful questions you can ever ask yourself, so that your first task is there. And for everyone who's messaging, the private Facebook support group for the Brilliant Life Blueprint opens on Friday, okay, because this whole thing shuts down on Thursday evening at 10 p.m. Okay, so we've got one final bonus session on Thursday, 7 o'clock. And then this whole week, this Facebook group, everything shuts down at 10 p.m. And then we take our attention across to the Brilliant Life Blueprint. Okay, so doors to the Brilliant Life Blueprint close at 10 p.m. on Thursday as well. Okay, so you've got 48 hours to join for everyone who's thinking of doing so. Tonight I want to talk about something that is in one sense very, very, very obvious and very, very commonsensical, and on the other hand, something that hardly anyone does, something that is profoundly important, and something that has a truly transformative impact upon the quality of our life in the full 8 pillars of prosperity that we spoke about last week. And that's something called the weekly engineering system. Okay, and with absolute 100% sincerity, I genuinely can't fathom what it would be like to enter into a new week without doing this. And I don't do it every week of the year, obviously, but I do it outside of holidays. I do it every week that I'm not on holiday, really. I always perform this. Sometimes it's rushed, sometimes it's quick, sometimes it's more luxurious and slow, but I can't imagine how I would move through a coming week without the engineering system guiding what that's going to look like. It's the most empowered, it's the most transformative, it's the most productive means, I think, of constructing week after week of living in the magic across all of those 8 pillars of prosperity that we've been speaking about all the way through this process. And actually in the Himalayan tradition, so the weekly engineering system as a concept comes from the Himalayan traditions. And the way they teach it, and my mentor spent years and years collectively living in monasteries in Bhutan and Nepal. And he said that when they were teaching this, they always used an analogy, and I think it's a good one. And the analogy was that imagine a group of monks or holy men or villagers wanted to build a new home or a new temple or a new monastery or a new grain store, build some kind of building high up in one of these mountain villages. Okay, the amount of planning they would put into what that would look like, the design of the building, the height of the building, what it would be made of, the size of it, the windows, the doors, making sure it faced away from the prevailing winds, making sure the roof was steep enough for the snow to slide off so that it didn't crumple the roof, making sure it was waterproof, and making sure it was big enough for the needs, how they would get the building material up there, the time of the year that they would start. They would plan it in the most minute context to make sure that the building of that structure was as easy and as effortless and as successful as possible. So they would never engage in building any kind of monastery, temple, house high up in one of these mountain villages without an insane level of planning, which is obvious. Think about any work we've ever done on our homes, extensions, new kitchens, decorating. We plan it to a lot of detail, don't we? And yet, how much more valuable is our life right now, your life, my life, than a building or a kitchen or decorating the front room? Our life is obviously kind of infinitely more valuable, more important than that. But how many of us engineer or plan our life in that level of detail? We put all this planning into things like building, but how many people actually plan a brilliant life, engineer a brilliant life? They talk about this idea of us being the architect and the engineer of our lives. We design it, we're the architects of what it looks like, and then we physically engineer it, we physically create it. The beauty of that is that when they talk about living in the magic, the maxim, the saying is that when we're on our deathbeds and we look back and we say, yep, good times, bad times, difficult times, brilliant times, but irrespective of the seasons of my life, I lived it in the magic. I lived my story. I lived the life I wanted to live. I was true to myself and my values and my passions and my ideals. I lived my life the way that I wanted to. That's what we call living in the magic. Achieving that is ultimately an accumulation of living brilliant weeks, which is made up of brilliant days. And they're the two focal points really of lots of the science and the theory of the brilliant life blueprint of this whole model. Is if we can construct brilliant days and we can wrap those around brilliant weeks, life will look after itself. We haven't got to worry about living a brilliant life. We haven't got to worry about how we engineer a brilliant life over the next 2, 3, 4 decades. We don't need to do that. Life will look after itself. If we live brilliant days and brilliant weeks around this construct of the 8 pillars, we by default will live brilliant lives. A brilliant life is just made up of brilliant days. Okay, so the Eastern systems, particularly what we'll talk about in the Brilliant Life Blueprint, focuses on the day and the week. To the day, living a brilliant day. The micro focus is creating brilliant days. The macro focus is creating brilliant weeks. To live brilliant days, this science, this blueprint has something called the Brahma Mutra Miracle Morning. Okay, the Brahma Mutra Miracle Morning. It's overall my most favorite practice. Okay, of all of the content covered within this framework, within this science, whether it's the Western neuroscience, whether it's the Eastern traditions, everything we cover in the Brilliant Life Blueprint, all of it, the Brahma Mutra Miracle Morning is my most favorite. I think it's the most truly transformative practice of them all. Okay, and that takes care of the days. The aim of the Brahmamutra translates from the Sanskrit as the creator's hour. So it's protecting a period of time every morning where we engineer and create and craft a truly spectacular day in terms of our behaviors, our mindsets, our attitudes, our gratitude, our goals, our behaviors, our diet, everything. Okay, and so the Brahmamutra means the creator's hour, how we create the next 24 hours in a way that is in the magic. Okay, I'm not going to talk about that today because it's hard to do justice to that in kind of 20-25 minutes. Okay, again, those of you who have joined the Brilliant Life Blueprint, we have a whole hour-and-a-half session. Actually, we have 2 sessions, but we have a whole module devoted to this. So the Brahmamutra Miracle Morning focuses on the day. The weekly engineering system focuses on the week. Okay, so the weekly engineering system is exactly what it says on the tin. Okay, so it's a process by which we engineer how we want the next 7 days to unfold around our life, our whole life, but specifically around the constructs of the 8 pillars of prosperity. Because if we're looking after those, if we are engaging in practices and techniques and behaviors and, events and, whatever that target all of those 8 pillars, we can't help but live in the magic. It's just a given. So the weekly engineering system is about how we physically, not loosely, not subjectively, not possibly, maybe, if I'm lucky, if I've got enough time, hopefully. It's about rigorously structuring and planning your week so that you prioritize progress and time and success and growth in all of the 8 pillars. Okay, and it's the, you remember last week we spoke about the idea of embryonic growth. We spoke about how for this model to work, we can't be really successful in some areas and moderately or unsuccessful in other areas. There's no point having loads of money and being lonely. There's no point having a lovely family and hating your job. There's no point being super healthy and having no meaning and purpose. We need to be cultivating embryonic success in every area. This is how we do it. Okay, and it's one of the things that, one of the criticisms that I've heard over the years, particularly when we've spoken about these models in the corporate setting at banks and in recruitment companies and insurance companies, is that if it's that structured, does it not take away spontaneity? Does it not take away, a sense of anticipation or fun? And it's not. It's this idea of structure. They say this beautiful saying, which is structure provides the springboard, spontaneity provides the splash. I love that. Structure provides the diving board or the springboard, spontaneity provides the splash. You can't dive into the pool of life and do it properly without a degree of structure, and that allows plenty of time and plenty of scope for spontaneous actions, but they still need to be wrapped around a structure of brilliance. So and again, this is why the Eastern Life Audit is so important, because obviously you want to put more emphasis on the pillars of prosperity that are weaker, and you can afford to put less emphasis on the pillars that are really strong because they're already looking after themselves. And the aim is that we consciously cultivate. The key thing is the what, the when, and the how and the where. These are sacrosanct. So, for example, imagine the health pillar, okay, which is so for all of the 8 pillars, we have kind of a 30 or 40-minute module in the Brilliant Life Blueprint that kind of goes through specific practices for elevating our life in all of those 8 pillars. And we start off with the health pillar because I think it lays the platform for everything else. It's very hard to excel in your career. It's very hard to excel in helping others. It's very hard to excel in, starting a business or whatever it is if you're unhealthy, if you're unwell, if you've got no energy, if you're bedridden, whatever it may be. So the health pillar is a good example. So the health pillar, so imagine it was Sunday evening, and I'll talk about why doing this on Sunday is so important in a minute. It's Sunday evening, you sat down, you sat down with, I talk about having lucky journals. I have a lucky journal. I get the same one every year, green, moleskin journal. I've used the same one every year for, years and years and years and years. And on a Sunday evening, and so imagine you're picking your health pillar and thinking about your Eastern life audit, and imagine you wanted to say you were suffering with poor energy, or say you wanted to lose weight, or say you needed to lower your blood pressure, or say you needed to get fitter, or whatever it might, 101, an infinite number of health aims, objectives, goals. The what, the when, the how, and the where. It's no good if your goal is to lose weight, if your goal is to eat healthier, if your goal is to get fitter. There's no power there. It's too big. How are you actually going to do it? How do you lock in over the course of the next 7 days proven evidence-based practices that will allow you to reach that goal? Okay. And because we know from the neuroscience research and the behavior research that what gets scheduled gets done. So for example, across studies looking at collectively hundreds of thousands of people engaging in positive behavior change, when someone has an intense goal or an intense focus, earn more money, start this business, strengthen this relationship, whatever it is, if they have an intense goal, but they don't structure behaviors to facilitate that, they rarely succeed. If you have the same level of intensity towards your goal, but you structure stepwise behaviors to get there, statistically, you are 67% more likely to succeed in realizing that goal. 67%. Imagine that in all areas of life. You can't help but succeed. So for me, for example, again, I can think back to 2018 when my life was not where I wanted it to be. Those of you who listened to the session last week, in 2018, I was in a real rut. In my work at Cancer Research, I had fallen out of love with it. 3 hours commute every day and never there with the kids, missing life. And when I did my Eastern Life audit and I resigned and I took that massive kind of leap of faith, I went into great detail around things like the health, or all of the pillars, but the health pillar. And for example, I never had time to go to the gym. I used to love going to the gym, and I hadn't been to the gym in months and months and months and months back in 2018. And one of my goals for going out on my own and starting the business and crafting the life that I dreamt of living was that I had the ability to go to the gym in the day. That was one of my goals, rather than at 10 o'clock at night. So now I've structured my working week so that I go to the gym from 2:30 to about 3:45 Monday, Wednesday and Friday before I pick my son up from school in town. Okay, because it's locked in. It goes into, there's a whole planner that comes with this. It's locked in. It's in the weekly engineering system. Monday, Wednesday, Friday at about 2:30, I'm at the gym. So that means I know I have to eat. By 1 in the afternoon, I have to have eaten. My bag is packed. I know it's going to happen. And I haven't missed a gym session other than Christmas in months and months and months and months. Things like planning my meals. It sounds silly, but you can't eat healthily on a whim. You can't do it. It's impossible. To eat healthily, you have to have the shopping to eat healthily. You have to change how you shop. You need a guide. What food are you going to eat? What meals are you going to eat? If you are at work and you can't prepare food, how do you bypass that? How do you eat healthy meals when you're away from home? If you leave the house early, how do you ensure a healthy breakfast? If you get home late in the evening, how do you ensure healthy evening dinners? Plan it, structure it, meal plans, recipe guides, making sure you've got the shopping in come Monday morning. You can't eat healthily on a whim. If you're trying to lose weight, you can't lose weight on a whim. Okay, so I structure, I structure my lunch, my breakfast and lunch. Every dinner's a bit more sporadic because it's family meals. But for me, my breakfast and my lunch is all about my body, my energy needs, my protein. It's about eating for me, not for the family, not for socialization. It's just a way, it's fuel. So I look at, I know what I'm eating, I know what ingredients I need. Think about things like dog walks, and particularly one of the things that I wrote in my plan in great detail when I was doing this whole process myself. March the 1st, my last day at work, I'll never forget, was February the 28th, 2018. March the 1st, a free man, and I spent the first 3 weeks just immersed in this. I didn't do anything practical. I didn't design business logos or anything. I just worked on this whole blueprint. And one of the things I used to hold before me in great detail as a profound motivation was my desire was that if I'm making this life transformation, I'm overhauling my life to practice what I preach, to use this blueprint to prove it in the fire. Can I actually transform my life in the way that I want it to be? One of the things I set myself was, one of my biggest passions in life is downhill mountain biking, enduro mountain biking. And, for me, I ride with my son at bike parks on most weekends, but I love big rides up in the South Downs. There's a national park about half an hour north of me, beautiful, kind of almost like a wilderness. And for me, taking a backpack, some food, maybe a small flask of coffee, and going for a 2, 3, 4 hour bike ride. It's the middle of nowhere. You see deers, you see birds of prey. You get for me, it's the ultimate medicine. And I used to dream about being able to do that on a weekday, because I used to leave for work at 7 in the morning. I never got home till about 8 in the evening. I was at the hospital all day. I couldn't imagine being able to do that in a weekday, and it was such a profound motivation for me. So now, most weeks, at least, definitely 2, usually 3 weeks out of every 4, I schedule at least a 2 to 3 hour bike ride up in the South Downs every week between school drop off and school pickup. Because remember last week we spoke about ideation. Last week we spoke about the 4 keys for unlocking success: ideation, visualization, verbalization, and actualization. Ideation, this was a massive part of my ideation. This was my ideal, having the flexibility to do that. And it's something that it's more of for me, it's more of like a totem when I go and do that. And I'm up there and I'm riding my bike, and it's 1 o'clock on a Tuesday afternoon or whatever it is, and there's no one about, and I'm immersed in this beautiful environment. And it just makes me feel overwhelmingly grateful for this model, for this blueprint, for this framework, for allowing me to realize those goals. And that's not me, that's just because the framework works. So actually scheduling it, structuring it, goes into the weekly planner. What day, what time, so I know when it's happening. Okay, you're engineering that process. Okay, things like my sleep. Sleep. Well, one of the modules in the Brilliant Life Blueprint is called Energy Explosion, and it sounds like a bit of a funny module to have in this kind of framework. But particularly the Nepalese traditions, the Nepalese monasteries, the monastic traditions talk about energy explosion, and they talk about the fact that energy, health generically, but energy specifically is your biggest asset, because energy, physical energy, vitality, energy, stamina, endurance, physicality, fitness, health is your secret weapon. Because if you have poor energy, you can't succeed in any of the 8 pillars of prosperity. So there's lots of things when we talk about energy explosion in the full module. There's herbal medicines, there's dietary practices, there's lifestyle practices, but sleep is a really big one. Okay, sleep to me, anyone here that's had kids or looked after grandkids, how much our mood, our motivation, our get up and go drops when you have a really bad sleep. It sucks the life out of you, doesn't it? And to me, sleep is an absolute linchpin. So no more, mindless scrolling through social media or flicking through silly TV channels until 10:30 at night. There's that, being in bed by, say this, maybe I'm sad, I don't know, but I'm always in bed by kind of 9:30. I read for half an hour, lights out at 10, and that's just my routine. I'm always up at 5. It gives me my 7 hours. Okay, and it works. And I all of the practices of the energy explosion that I teach in the Brilliant Life Blueprint are things that I use every day, because without energy, you've got nothing. Okay, so structure it. So imagine doing that for all 8 pillars, but not in the same level. Like I said, the pillars that you're flying in, the pillars that you're really succeeding in, you haven't really got to do much about. You can just look up, it looks after itself because it's already succeeding. But the pillars that are weaker or scarcer, or there's more friction or more problems, that's where you want to really structure it. If you're having a bit of a tough time in your relationship with your husband or wife? How do you schedule a coffee or a counseling session or a meal? If you haven't, if you're struggling to maintain a relationship with your aging parents, which is something that I'm having to do, is how do you structure time? How do you protect time to see them and spend time with them? Whatever it may be. So and Sunday is key, okay? Because what we want is we want this to become an habitual practice that doesn't require pre-planning in terms of completing the weekly engineering system. No one here, well, I would imagine no one here ever has to set a reminder on their phone or an alarm to brush their teeth in the morning or to brush their teeth before bed. Why? Why don't we have to think about it? It's habitual. The neural network in the brain is so established, we do it as a habit. Okay, we want the weekly engineering system to be like that, where Sunday afternoon, Sunday evenings, anytime on Sunday really, we complete the weekly engineering system. It might take you 10 minutes, it might take you an hour. Okay, some weeks are really easy, some weeks are really challenging. Some weeks you might be able to do it really well, and some weeks are so busy and so manic the whole thing falls apart. But if you just do one thing, it's better than what it would have been. So, and for me, psychologically, there is absolutely nothing more empowering. And I usually do it about 8 in the evening once the kids are in bed. And I sit down again. One of the things that is a prerequisite, it's mandatory for those of you who are doing the Brilliant Life Blueprint, is you must buy a journal. Okay, but it's got to be a journal, not just a scrap piece of paper or a rubbish ring binder, something that you'll be using it every day, something that you can connect with, something that's aesthetically pleasing for you. Okay, sitting down with that journal for quietly with a cup of tea or a glass of wine or whatever, maybe some nice music playing, it might be quiet, and you sit down and you look at the coming week and you think about, how do I engineer this into a week that is the very best week of it can possibly be? How do I bulletproof my mindset, my outlook, my attitude, my health, my relationships, my career, my work, helping others? How do I make this week so that it'll come Sunday evening next week, if I knew that I was going to die that evening, I would look back on this week and say there were no regrets. I lived it fully. I lived it beautifully. I lived it as best as I possibly could in all of the key areas of life. And write it down. Write it down. What do you want to achieve? Why do you want to achieve it? What challenges are there? What problems do you have to navigate to make that happen? One that I struggle with a lot, and I think it's our culture, is hobbies and passions. I spoke about the bike ride once a week, but I think one of the things I need to do more of, looking at my kind of notes and work, is other than that, smaller things, more time for other hobbies and things like that. And how do I do that? Where do I find the time? Where does it fit? How do I protect it? So come Monday morning, if you haven't done this, it's impossible to emphasize how it feels. If you have done it, you'll know what it feels like to wake up on a Monday morning. There's no sense of dread. There's no sense of slog. There's no sense of having to push things uphill. There's no sense of what has to happen today. Where am I going? What am I doing? How am I going to eat healthy? How am I going to spend time with my son? There's no question marks. You wake up on Monday morning and you are raring to go. You've got this beautiful week ahead of you. A week where you protected time for yourself, for your relationships, for your health, for your hobbies, for your career, whatever it may be. And you can't wait to get going into the week. You can't wait to live it. You can't wait to seize this day and seize this week and show up. Whether it's a good day, whether it's a bad day, whether there are challenges, whether there are problems. There's a beautiful, I can't remember it off by heart, there's a beautiful kind of mantra or prayer from the Nepalese and the Bhutanese traditions, which is, please God, don't give me an easy life, rather give me a challenging life so that I can prove what I'm kind of made of. And it always resonates with me. No one wants challenges, but we all have them. We had a major one last week at work, and it's a sign of kind of growth. And can I show up and can I maintain positivity, and can I maintain happiness and contentment that comes from within, irrespective of what's going on outside? And it's starting the week like that is just the most beautiful way of living. And then suddenly you get a week in the bag that's lived in the magic. And then come Sunday evening, you go again. And then you go again. And then suddenly you've got a month where you've pretty much lived in the magic. and then 6 months, and then a year. And then you look back and you think, look how far I've come. Look at the progress I've made. And you look at the goal, particularly in January. My goal for doing this week is that, on the first week of January next year, 2026, you guys can look back and say, look at the progress I've made through using these practices. Look how far I've come. Look at how much higher and better my 8 pillars are compared to what they were. And then suddenly you've had a whole year where you've engineered a life in the magic. Do that 10 times, you've had a decade living in the magic. Do that ongoing, and suddenly you've got a life lived in the magic. And that's what this is about. It's not for the elite few. It's not for the gifted monks and mystics of the Himalayas. It's for everyone. It doesn't matter where you're starting from. It doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter how successful you might be on the outside to other people. It doesn't matter where you are starting from, who you are, what age you are. Everyone can start tomorrow to recreate their life anew. Okay, not possibly, maybe sometimes. We can all do it. Tomorrow, you can recreate yourself in however you want to move into your ideal life. And it starts with all the things we spoke about last week, the neurobiology, the theta waves, the ideations, the 4 keys, the whole lot, but it's there, okay? And that's the aim of all of this, okay? So try it tonight for the rest of the week. Try it tonight for tomorrow. How can you construct tomorrow so that it's lived in the magic? Do it from Wednesday through to Sunday. On Sunday, do it for the coming week. Okay, life will never be the same again. I promise you. Okay, so that's the weekly engineering system. This is our penultimate session. We've got one more live session on Thursday evening at 7 p.m. So a final module or kind of content, and it's our closing ceremony. This whole thing shuts down 10 p.m. Thursday. Doors to the Brilliant Life Blueprint close at 10 p.m. on Thursday. So you've got just over 48 hours to join me if you want to. We only run the Brilliant Life Blueprint once a year. Okay, so if you want to join, this is your only chance for 2025. Okay, so I hope that's helpful. For some reason, again, Facebook isn't showing me any comments or questions. Okay, so if you ask any questions, I will reply this evening or tomorrow. Okay, once I finish the live. So massive thank you for being here. Really appreciate it. Have a lovely evening, and I will see you on Thursday at 7 p.m.